Welcome back to another episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. My name's Nick Potty. I'm here with Stephen Clark. How you doing, Stephen?
Good, thanks. I'm very excited about today's guest. This is a couple of guys that I've followed on social media, probably for as long as I've followed anyone property related on social media. They kicked off about 2014-15, and their strategy is build to rent. I was always really fascinated by the strategy that they were developing new build developments and holding them. I thought it was a great strategy. And you followed them as well for a few years, haven't you, Nick?
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely got them on my social media. Lloyd and Andi from Whitebox Solutions. That they actually met on a property training course. One of these kind of, I think it was one of these free weekend seminars or something like that. And they're now, well, they've built multiple kind of brands of boxes, haven't they? They've got their building company, they've got their education, their lettings, and their investments. So no, it was really interesting talking to them about how far they've come in the last sort of 5 or 6 years. And the specifics on the project, their first project, which was like pretty much he described how they winged it.
Yeah, and I love that. I'm glad we didn't go into huge detail on other projects, because I always feel like I always get more value. And I think listeners will get more value out of hearing, people's humble beginnings, how they started, and how, like you say, they absolutely winged the first kind of one. They've done a bit of due diligence, they got a bit of comfort on it, but they just chucked down the only money they had on a 10% deposit at auction, and they managed to raise the private finance. Then they managed to get 100% development funding to do the first deal, and what a success it was. And Andy was into a lot of detail on the project and the success of the project and how that's kind of propelled them and got the momentum going in their business, isn't it?
Yeah, and obviously how they kept those units, those 8 houses, townhouses that they built, and they now retain them in their portfolio, and they've refinanced them actually over the years to pull even more money back out. So yeah, definitely a model that we're looking into, Stephen, build to rent. Definitely something we're going to try and investigate more, because it's still quite a new thing. There's obviously big institutional investors now getting into this and building these big apartment blocks in city centres. So it's definitely a thing we need to look closer at. So without further ado, we will transition to the interview with Andi Cooke from Whitebox Solutions.
Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast, Andi Cooke. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's great to be here with you.
So Andi is from Whitebox Property Solutions, is it? With your business partner, Lloyd Girardi?
Girardi, yes.
Girardi, that's it. I always get his name wrong when I pronounce it.
That's
just
right.
as well he's not on.
Yeah, that's it.
and you guys specialise in build to rent, and I've followed your journey for a few years, and an old business partner of mine, he actually went on one of your courses a couple of years back. So, I know you really well, but for the listeners' benefits, can you give us a bit of background on your own background and Lloyd's background, and kind of how you came together and what your plan was at the start?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I'm more from the trades background. So I was I suppose I am a carpenter, but I say I'm a carpenter. I'm not really qualified as a carpenter. It's just, you just do what you do as you're growing up, don't you? And I kind of fell into carpentry. Not necessarily even on building sites or anything like that. Everyone thinks that you're on new builds on big sites and things like that. But I actually worked in library fitting originally, so putting counters in and things like that. Then I moved on to sort of stage and set design for sort of in hotels for big conferences and things. So carpentry, but not skirting boards and the things that you'd know around property. Wasn't really in property at that point. And then in 2007, I left that. I was about 30 at the time, and I decided that I wanted to try something myself, do something myself. So I didn't really know anything else other than what I was doing carpentry-wise. So I thought I'd work on houses, just small stuff. It was, kitchens, bathrooms. Just threw myself into it, and but started a small building company, I suppose. But that literally was just me. Then I started doing extensions in 2009. Once I got used to that, sort of started working with teams of trades and all that kind of thing. And that finally culminated into 2012, 13, when I built my own house as a self-build. And by that point, then, you kind of been through the process, if you like. So once you can do it once, then, you start thinking about how can I sort of scale this up and how can I do this for other people or on bigger sites. So I wasn't actually looking at sites. I got interested in property investment. And, I was thinking, well, you see people who have got several buy-to-lets or something. I had not a clue of how they did that. I couldn't get my head around it. How can you own more than one property? Mortgages are so expensive and deposits and all that kind of thing. But it sort of sat in the background, and I was intrigued. And it was later in that year then when I don't know, some training popped up on my phone or something like that, and I decided I'd look a bit further into it. And it just happened that that Lloyd was at a time when things were changing for him. I already knew Lloyd at that time. He's my I don't know, he married my cousin basically, but they were going out at that time. That's since we did the property. They were going out at the time, and so he was sort of in the background. And the standard thing, you see people at family parties and talk a load of rubbish, the same conversations every time you see people, and really superficial. And but it helped me a little bit with my house, because at the time he was a lighting salesman. So LED lighting, you know, everyone's got it these days, but back then it was a little bit newer. And he was selling that. And I saw a bit about him, I suppose. I saw that he's a lot younger than me, about 10 years younger than me. And I just saw that he had a bit of a different way of looking at things, a bit of a spark, I suppose, which resonated with me. And we decided to look at it from there. So it was really 2014. We went on I think it was free training weekend for the first thing we ever did. And it just opened our eyes to some of the possibilities, I suppose. And we've been sort of doing it ever since.
And your guys' plan originally was to kind of build up a portfolio, then, I suppose, to get this financial freedom.
Yeah, I think, well, the way it kind of worked was we went, we heard some of these, we didn't really know any of the strategies in property. It was we were really sort of green in those days, like I say, very end of 2013 to start of 2014. And, we didn't even know what things like HMOs were particularly, and, like even joint ventures and all that kind of stuff. All this terminology were really, really new to us. What I was a tradesman and he was a lighting salesman. We were just sort of pretty standard people, really, with a bit more of a vision maybe, and willing to work hard. And yeah, the training definitely showed us a bit of a new light. But I think we didn't necessarily know we were going to go into big developments of that at the start of it. We didn't know how it was going to pan out. We just wanted to sort of build up a bit of a portfolio. I think right from the start, we were shown the way of investment properties rather than just sort of flipping properties and things like that. And we really like that. All right, perhaps you don't get the big return on day one when you sell something, but you keep something and you get that reoccurring income, and that it can feed you for a long time. And you don't eat the goose when it's laying golden eggs, sort of thing. So that kind of resonated with us, I suppose, right at the start. And we knew that I had a building background, obviously, and I'd already built my house. So we wanted to, I think quite early on, very early on, we thought, well, maybe we could utilize that rather than just going single buy to lets and keep churning them out like a lot of other people in the community that we sort of found ourselves in were. And then we did find a property really quickly, and we can talk about that in a minute, I'm sure. But we sort of got thrown into the development bit, I suppose.
Because I'm assuming when you went on your training, no one was teaching build to let. This would have been, buy to let, flips about HMO strategies. No one would have been talking about build to let. So what kind of give you the thought process or the spark to go, well, let's go for a build to let as our main strategy?
Yeah, no, it certainly wasn't. It wasn't even development training that we did. It was just simply the concepts of property investment and the simple ideas behind it, and how you can use it as a wealth building strategy, I suppose. I mean, we found a site which was at auction, and obviously at auction you can't pick a time when the auction's going to be. So it just happened that it was 2 weeks after that first weekend training that we had. So I'd already found this while I was waiting for that training, and I'd already found this site at auction, and it seemed affordable. It was £100,000 to £125,000 guide price. It previously had planning for 8 masonettes locally to us in Northampton. It was some derelict garages basically in the centre of town, and there was a lot of questions we had, a lot of things we couldn't answer, but we decided to look into it a bit further. And obviously we would have preferred the auction in, say, 3 months' time, when we could like learn a bit more about it, or find out some more information. But you can't choose when the auction is going to be. So a bit of a long story short, we ended up getting that site. It's all sort of documented in Lloyd wrote a book about 3 years ago, and we documented that process about how we didn't get it, then we did get it, and all that kind of thing. But then when we looked at building that out, we were going to get the planning back. We actually got it for 8 masonette houses in the end. Sorry, townhouses. It was masonettes before. And I suppose we just looked at it and we said, well, we're going to build these out. Why sell them at the end when it's going to take us so much energy to get 8 properties, that if you buy them individually, to get a portfolio, you've got to go through the legals 8 times. You've got to, all those costs that you're doubling up. You know, if we build 8 properties and then try and keep them at the end of it, it just seemed really efficient. And I suppose it made sense to us. So that's kind of what we did.
And see at this point, Andy, had you you hadn't done any developments yet. You'd only built your own house, is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but you obviously had the background and kind of like the trades, and you were a carpenter to trade and all that. So was that kind of, when you decided to go down that route, was it not quite scary thinking that you're now going to build out, you know, eight houses? Or
yeah, look, you know, we had a lot of you know, we were pretty open and honest, me and Lloyd. Anyone who knows us is on our community, the Whitebox Property Solutions community on Facebook or any of our other communities, know that we don't sort of shy away from it, and we're quite open to say that we were pretty naive in those, you know, in those early days. And I think you have to be a little bit sometimes when you start on a new track, and you know, you're starting a new venture, if you like. If you knew everything that was going to come up, all the problems that were going to come up over the next 12 to 18 months, 2 years, none of us would do anything, would we? You know, so, you know, if you, you guys got kids?
Yeah.
You know, like if you were told all the crap they were going to put you through before you conceived and went through 9 months before you actually got them into this world, you'd never have started in the first place, would you? You know, so you know, that's the same with developments. Developments is raising a child, basically. They throw a lot of crap at you, but they can be quite rewarding at the end of it. You know.
So talk us through this first site then. Did you got at auction, and you know, how was it funded, and what was the kind of overall plan? I'm assuming, you know, because you were thinking about building the portfolio, that you were going to just refinance the development at the end of it onto a backlet mortgages across the whole 8.
Yeah. So what we did is we bought it. Like I said, the guide price was 100 to 125, but the reserve we found out later was actually 157. So we would have never got it for under 157. We actually did get it for the 157. It's a little bit different at auction these days. This was obviously a few years ago, and now they usually have to keep the guide price within 10% of their reserve price. So you kind of know a little bit where they set that price to where they're expecting to go as a minimum. Obviously, auction, a thing will sell for as much as the demand is on that day. That's the whole kind of point of it, isn't it? So we had 157. We didn't really have any money, to be honest, I had enough in my business account, so my building company's account, to pay the 10% on the day. So that was 16,000 odd with a couple of fees. So I could put that on to secure the property on the day, because at auction, once the hammer goes down, you literally have to pay that there and then you have 28 days on a physical auction. These days, there's a few more online auctions coming about where you actually get twice as long. You get 56 days, but on a physical one where you go in the room, you usually get 28 days, and you have to pay for the whole property by then at the agreed price, or you forfeit your 10%. You know, you lose it, which is, you know, makes sense. So it actually, you know, did put a bit of pressure on, because we had to go and find, what was it, we had to find 140,000 to top it up, but we also needed that 16 grand back, because that was my working capital in my building company, and I had to keep building extensions and things. And, you know, that was probably someone's deposit they'd just given me to build their nice single story extension at the back of the house, which I would have been pretty annoyed if I didn't do it. So you know, it allowed us to secure it though. So we went out there, and, you know, we were pretty hot off the weekend where we got some training, and we were confident from the weekend and being told what we could do, but we were also, you know, shitting ourselves because we'd never done it before. And, you know, to be quite honest, we didn't think anyone would give us a fiver, because, you know, we'd never done it before. We heavily hit imposter syndrome and buyer's remorse at that point. You know, we stood on the site the next day after the auction, went to these derelict garages, there's actually a picture of these garages, and they're just, you know, it's like, you can picture it with half open doors filled with tenant super cans and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, just God.
Which town or city is it? Whereabouts?
It's in Northamptonshire. So we're basically Northamptonshire. It's in Northampton itself, but quite near the town centre, but in a, you know, less desirable area. And we're just like, oh my God, you know, like when you've pushed yourself past your limits, really. And the next day you sort of look at it and you just think, what have I done? What have I done? You know, like, it's, you know, is this the right sort of thing? But, you know, that I think it's actually those times of adversity that we stretch our barriers, isn't it? You know, it's easy not to go into those days, but actually those days help us grow, don't they? So, so we got hold of ourselves and we said, right, we've got to find this money. We need to find this 100 odd grand. So we went and spoke to sort of all the people we knew, but obviously we weren't really in that background. People didn't know us as developers and all that kind of stuff. I had a certain amount of credibility from the building company I'd worked for. I've been doing that for a good few years at this point, and I'd worked for some, quite wealthy people building extensions on their houses and things. Not that those people necessarily chucked in loads of money, but I was having those conversations. I was getting some positive feedback, but not quite fulfilling it. One guy said that he would give us 50,000, basically on the relationship he had with me, because I've done some work for him. He was a family friend. He knew Lloyd as well, but Lloyd hadn't got as much credibility at that point. He was a lot younger and never done anything in property, so it was basically on the strength of my relationship with him. But we needed to find the rest, and then somebody mentioned to us that we should look at getting a bridging loan. Again, very naive. We didn't even know what a bridging loan was at that point. We even joked that we thought, bridging loan, what's that all about? We just bought a load of garages. I'm sure we need a garaging loan, so yeah, we didn't even know the concept of, that it bridges the gap between finances and all that kind of stuff. We get it now. And in fact, in November 2015, once we worked out that you could use this, we had about 8 bridging loans. We were buying properties all over the place, because these things are just tools, aren't they? Once you learn how to use a tool, you keep using it. So anyway, that first one, we got a bridging loan for the rest of it. We actually got that on a 6-month term. So that allowed us to complete at the auction, because bridging loans are also quite quick. So that the beauty of them, they do cost a little bit more than standard like development finance or something like that, more short term as it sounds. But you can complete on them. There's less due diligence because you're going to be backing that loan basically, and on the site as well. So we did that. And we got it within 10 days. So we actually went one day over. It took us 29 days to complete on the auction, but because they could see it was happening, they were quite happy to wait for that. Then we owned the site basically with the bridging loan, paying it off and the 50,000 from the investor. That just bought us a bit of time. So we had 6 months then while it had lapse planning. So we were getting the planning back. So we had 6 months while we were sorting the planning out to find more private investors. We actually did it in 3 months, so it didn't take us that long. Once we started on those conversations, and it was smaller amounts of money. It was, people putting in, maybe 10,000, 20,000, 25,000. And it was predominantly sort of around sort of family members, family friends and all that kind of stuff, because they're the people who know you the best, and lending money and all that is all about relationships at the end of the day, isn't it? So so that's kind of how it started for us. We were then able to pay the bridging loan off with the private investors. And then when we got the planning, obviously we could get development finance, and we got 100% development finance to do the build. So, that's how we then progressed to do the build.
Nice. Because you actually already owned the land up front that you managed to get 100% development financing.
So we found a company who was quite new to development finance at the time. So Funding Circle, you may have heard of them as a peer-to-peer lender. Funding Circle are very big and very well known, but normally in the business loans sort of space, if you like. But they were just looking to get into development loans. So they put some pretty good packages together, really. And, we did our first 2 sites with them. They even pre-funded the build, which is unusual. But they decided after a few years that, that I don't think, I think they pushed it a bit hard, to be honest, and they decided to go back to, business lending rather than development. So they're not actually in the market anymore. But actually, I think there's, especially now coming out the back of what we've done in the last year, Corona and all that kind of thing, there's a lot of banks couldn't lend money for a long time. So there's some really tight terms on money at the minute, as in, they're trying to get money out. They're being very competitive. So yeah, there's a lot of options out there with lending at the moment.
A couple of things that I picked up on there, Andy, like I want to ask you about. Number one, kind of the raising finance part, right? So I think this is a thing a lot of people struggle with. It's something I struggle with as well. I've never actually gone and asked somebody for money before, but I know that I could obviously take my investing or developing experience to the next level if I do so, because of that kind of imposter syndrome that you talked of. What's the best way? What would you say to people who are struggling with that, who are just, maybe they're scared of rejection? I don't know what it is. Like, what's the tips for that sort of thing?
Look, that's not uncommon. I think that especially as we get more successful in like your day job and, your careers and all that kind of thing, it's hard to go back then and start something where you put yourself in that uncomfortable position again. And we see that quite a lot, actually. And people don't want to have those uncomfortable conversations with people. And really, that's just a mindset thing, because, especially in the climate that we're in now, if you leave your money in the bank, that's kind of foolish, really, because it's just melting away, isn't it? Like they're printing money in the UK and in the US and everywhere. They're printing money to get us out of the pandemic that we've been in the last 12 months. And of course, as we print more money, that shrinks the money that we've got sitting in our accounts with no interest rate at all. So, it's just eroding. It's completely eroding. So you asking for people to put them into a property with security. So you might give a personal guarantee. You might be able to even put a charge on it if somebody gives you the full amount and you're not getting development lending as well. That is pretty secure for them. They've got, especially if they can get a charge on it as well and a personal guarantee to you. That's a really secure vehicle that you're offering them to be able to sort of give them a really good return on their money. Now, even if they didn't get, typically with private investors, we'd perhaps give 10%, it might be 8%. It kind of depends how much they put in and terms and all that kind of thing, whatever, and what deals we've got at the time. But, even if they didn't get any return on it, but it wasn't eroding like it is in the bank, and it's against a secured kind of vehicle like that, which without you getting involved with them, they probably wouldn't have access to. I think it's just really sort of flipping it on its head that you're representing them an opportunity, whereas I think people really see it that people are helping them out as a developer or as in property. They see it like they're the one trying to get a favor off of people, whereas it's not really like that. And really that only lasts for the first deal or two that you do, because as you just said there, Nick, you need to really learn to turn that key of how to use other people's money to expedite your journey and to grow your journey. Because if people who try and use their own money, and I don't care how much you've got in the bank, you will cap your growth, because you cannot, even you could have 500,000, you could have 1 million, you could have 2 million or whatever. You will only ever do what you can afford to do. And as we grow, we're doing 24 flats, we're doing 4 houses, we're doing 28 houses in planning, we've got 12 houses we're just finishing. We've got loads of different sites. If we wouldn't have enough money just with ourselves available at any one point to be able to keep growing like that. And you do cap it. We quite often actually tell people that people come to us and say, well, I've got 50,000 or I've got 100,000 or it could be 200,000, whatever. What's my best way to use it? How do I do it? And if they've got something like 50,000, I'll just tell them, just put that in an account, put it, do something with it where you've got that as your kind of parachute money, and learn how to then use don't use that on your site thinking that you're going to be able to, if something goes wrong later on that you couldn't foresee, you've got it there to get you out of town, or if you need to use it for income or something like that, you'll do much better if you use that pressure to find the money like we had at the auction, where we had to find it in 28 days. That's the key to that, isn't it? If we'd have had 6 months to find it, we'd have probably still found it in the last 28 days, and we'd have messed about for 5 months worrying about making phone calls to people asking them for money, wouldn't we? So you need that time pressure. I love
that concept, Andy. Back against the wall, you'll make shit happen when you need to make things happen. And
100%.
You guys put yourself right where your comfort zone to do it right from the start.
Yeah, definitely.
What about the other question I had on that was the planning? Sounds like you guys just went for it like kind of gung-ho. You thought, right, we'll figure this out. But, obviously for me, I would be like, oh, what happens if I don't get planning for like these 8 houses and I get knocked back and then I've got this bridging loan and like there's that risk and stuff like that. So what kind of level of due diligence would you do now, sort of thing, if you're looking at a site? Is there any kind of...
Yeah, so I mean, obviously with developments, you do need to do a level of due diligence. I mean, what we did then and what we do now is very different, obviously, because we're more experienced and we've educated ourselves better and all that kind of thing. But even what we do now is different to what people would perhaps think. So back then, we did the due diligence that we could, and you talked about the planning there. What we did is I actually, before we went to the auction, in that couple of weeks that we were looking at it, I spoke to the planner who'd given it planning in 2008. So we're looking at it in 2014. You get 3 years to implement the planning in UK, and so basically this had run out. It had lapsed, what we call lapsed. So I'd spoken to the planner, and luckily it was the same guy still in position. So I spoke to him and said, look, you gave this planning. We're looking at going to look to buy this site. Would you think that you'd be giving it planning again? And there's you can get pre-app advice, you can get official advice, all that kind of stuff. But I was just looking to get his sort of steer on it, if you like. And luckily in the town, in Northampton, they'd put in what they called an enterprise zone in that time. So they'd done a lot of work. They put new train stations, new bus stations, new innovation centres. And literally the border for this was, our site was here, the innovation centres and all that were on the other side of the line. We were the next site along. So in essence, they couldn't access their budget to upgrade that derelict site and do anything about it. But really, it was it was tainting the rest of all that work they'd done, if you like. This was, you could walk to the train station 200 yards sort of thing. And this was a brand new train station. So we were in essence going to them saying, look, we're prepared to take a bit of risk, we're prepared to develop this site at our own cost and all that, which will be in line then with what you're doing. So it was kind of on that one, a little bit like pushing against an open door. Obviously, we still had to go through the process. There was no guarantees or anything like that. But, we got some very positive response before we bought auction. So we felt it was worth the risk. What we do now, though, is when we're looking at new sites and, the way we train people, and in fact, I suppose why we train people is for everything you just said there, Nick, there's a lot of people who could get into a lot of hot water, if you like, just going and not understanding the due diligence process, if you like. And we've been through it lots of times now. So, we try to show people the way that we do it to give them a bit of an insight as they're coming up, if they're new to developments or coming up from single buy-to-lets and HMOs and things. But what we do is it's a numbers game, a complete numbers game. We find out what it is that we're looking for. We work out what areas we would want to develop in, and then we try and find as much of that style of property, land, or whatever it is as we can at that point. Then we will either send letters out. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of these will be on Rightmove, some of them will be actively for sale, some won't be for sale, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll try and have start the conversations with either the vendor or the agents that the vendor have appointed to sell it. We've got an analysis. The way it's really quite a quick deal analysis of the way we would look at it to start that conversation, and then we will probably offer at that stage. We don't go into full heavy due diligence surveys, all this kind of stuff before we get any commitment from a vendor, and we do that through experience now, because we've done it in the past and lost 20 grand on a site where we've done valuations, we've done ground surveys, we've done all this due diligence, we spent months on it, and then they're going to sell it to someone else anyway. So we want commitment from them. What I sort of tell people is it's not like going and buying a single house where you go and walk around it and it's a pretty simple process, and all right, some fall out but most carry on. Developments is it's a conversation, it's negotiation right from the start, really. So we want them to commit to us, we'll commit to them, and our commitment is that we will pay for all of those surveys and all those kind of things and whatever else. We'll put a figure on the table that we're looking to pay for it, and we will pay for it as long as nothing serious happens it's a subject to those due diligences, basically. So if something comes up where there's £100,000 worth of contamination under the ground and we had no idea it was there until we did the survey, then that's a conversation with the owner, because at the end of the day he still owns the land, and whether we buy it or the guy next door buys it in a month's time, he's still going to find the same thing. So that at some point he's going to have to be realistic about the price point, if you like. So we kind of do the due diligence, but we do it in a set period of time, if you like, where we got that commitment from them.
Can you take us back to the site on Northampton, the first site, the 8 townhouses? What was the kind of build process, the build timeline, the build cost, and then what was the end value, and what was the exit you guys done on this one then?
Okay, yeah. So that one we got the planning for the 8 townhouses. If anyone's seen our stuff before, it's the white building with the grey sort of fascia boards and all that kind of stuff. So centre of town, didn't have to have gardens because it was so central in town, and it was they were sort of commuter townhouses, if you like. We're in Northampton, we're about 52 minutes down to Euston on the train. So you can imagine that a townhouse in Northampton with a parking space and all those kind of things, you're going to get a 1-bed flat for in at the other end of that train ride. So it's a very good commuter belt, if you like. The build we actually used on that one was we used SIPS panels, so structural insulated panels. So it's a little bit like timber frame, but it's like a super timber frame where it's got the insulation actually built inside the panels. It's completely built off site, as in the panels, and then they ship them on pallets, and we made it up on site. We actually built it. My building company was the main contractor. We built it ourselves. Apart from my house, that was the first development that my guys had ever built. And I actually went back. I was kind of off the tools at that point, And I went back on and thought, right, I need to get my hands dirty on this. I need to make sure that we understand how this build goes together. I did a couple of days, to be honest, and my hands got all dirty and all that. So I kind of, yeah, you carry on, lads. It's easy. But yeah, we kind of put it together. But I joke about it, but actually the SIPS panel did make it quite easy. It was about 7 or 8 months from sort of start breaking ground to actually finishing it, to build 8 houses. So kind of less than about a month a house, if you looked at it like that. Purely because of the SIPs.
More expensive, or
they're a little bit more than traditional. Yeah, they are, but it made it worthwhile on that one. But what was really good on that, it was very modular. So they were kind of like, each townhouse was 3 boxes on top of each other, exactly the same sizes, internal staircase, external door, next one exactly the same, next one exactly the same, 4 at the front, 4 at the back. So people said to us, so you must build everything out of SIPs because it makes it so efficient. But it did on that site because it was so uniform, big square box. Whereas, when we build other styles of house, it's not so cost effective. If you have to have a brick out of skin, for instance, then it kind of negates the whole point of having SIPs, because SIPs are the full walls construction. So you'd be putting another skin of bricks on the outside of that to make it look different. So yeah, it worked well for that one. Yeah. So on the other costs there, so it cost from memory, it was about 600,000 to do the build. We were at about £100 a square foot in those days, but it was 2014, so we'd be a little bit more expensive these days. Probably comparably about 115 to 120 pounds a square foot for the actual build side of it. Our total costs were 810, 830, something like that, including our interest and all that kind of thing, private investor interest. And then we refinanced it. Obviously, we had the land on top of that as well. We refinanced that as one building. So I think you mentioned it, Stephen, earlier. We put a commercial refinance on all 8 properties. So it was a commercial mortgage. You could do it singly as individual buy-to-lets, but you probably wouldn't get one buy-to-let company to take all 8. You'd have to split it between different companies.
Because of the competition, yeah.
Yeah, you got title split and all that. There's extra cost to title split and whatever. We were going to keep them long term, so we still own them now. So we just do it as a commercial mortgage. So it's probably about I don't know, actually something 4%, something 4. So it's a little bit more than I mean, rates are really low at the minute, aren't they? If you're doing normal mortgage, but yeah, a little bit more, but not over the top. We rented them all out.
You managed to exit from?
We use Shawbrook for that. So yeah, so like a challenger bank, Shawbrook are. Yeah, they're not a high street. They're a little bit more forward thinking. Yeah, high street can be a bit stuffy, can't they? And a bit, if you don't fit right between their guidelines. I mean, if you can use someone like Lloyd's or someone like that, but you probably get a bit less loan to value out of it. You get a really good rate, but yeah, it depends. Our main concern was to pull all the money out, so we needed to get all of the development for funding circle. We need to get all the development finance out plus interest, and get all the private investors' money out plus interest. And that's kind of where we're at with build to rent. If we can get, on the day we finish it, if we can get all the money out of the whole job and pay everybody back, even if we've got no extra money, if there's if there's nothing left in the deal, but everyone's paid back, then we're kind of giving ourselves, in that case, 8 properties, haven't we? So we've got the income we've got the income from the rent. So on that one, for instance, was about 6,400 for the 8 houses, the rental per month, and then the mortgage on it was about half that, so 3,000 or whatever. So you've got rental coming in every month, and then you've got the capital growth of the property. And it's about 2.5 years later, we refinanced that one and pulled another 200,000 out or whatever. So, and that was probably 3 years ago. So we could probably do that again if we wanted, or you could leave the money in your portfolio, and as the values rise up, the GDV of the properties, then obviously your loan to value sinks down, doesn't it? So you could then settle it at whatever you feel. I mean, for our personal thought on that is, I would never go less than probably 50%, because that's not using the money properly. I'd rather pull the money out and use it on another deal. Having something without a mortgage is just a wasted opportunity to me. I'd rather pay a low value mortgage on it and use that capital on another deal and produce another St James, what does exactly the same. Especially, but at the same time,
acquisition and growing period, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I also wouldn't want to be too high. Ideally with my loan to value. So if you're getting up at, you can refinance at 75, sometimes 80%, but you're probably exposing yourself to market conditions a bit at that, and empty void periods with rent and that. So if you can erode it down to, say, everyone's got a different opinion on it, but maybe 50-60%, that's a nice balance where you're using the capital, but protecting yourself if you get any sudden market conditions.
Absolutely. And what was the initial kind of end valuation when that site was completing?
I think it was 1.2, 1.18, something like that. Yeah, and I think initially it was 1.18, and it's gone up now to 1.4, I think.
Nice. So instantly, did you put a 70% or 75% loan to value mortgage on that with a commercial loan?
Yeah, we did a 75 with Shawbrook. Yeah.
Get all the money back out on deal one. So that must have given you huge amounts of confidence to move forward, knowing that what you planned, what you guys thought could have been.
Yeah, I think on that one we there was a lot of going back to what Nick said earlier. There was a lot of like sitting around my table at home, kitchen table, like really what if in it, because we just didn't know all the answers. I looked at the costs against my house and the best I could look at it, but I was aware that I wouldn't know everything. We asked local architects that we were friendly with, who actually did the drawings for it. We asked everyone we could, but we were aware that we wouldn't ever be able to know everything about it. And we sort of sat around my table in the evenings and said, well, look, in this case scenario, what if we thought we'd planned it that we were going to make 270,000 on that deal, which we appreciated that some would be left in or it would be left in, but thought 270,000 profit, of course we would do it for that. That was a massive amount of money in our heads. What if it was 150? What if something came up that we just couldn't know, contamination, whatever? Would we still be prepared to do it? Yeah, of course we would. 150. What if it was only 50 grand? Would we still be prepared to do all that hassle and time and it being our everything for a year or whatever? And then we even said, look, even if it just broke even, obviously that's not the idea, that you want something to break even and spend all that time and effort and agonizing over it. But we knew it would be our first one and we would get traction from it and we'd learn so much and we'd build reputation, we'd all those things. So we said, yeah, that even in that worst case scenario, then that's kind of, and then you sort of at the point where, all right, it's got to go £270,000 wrong before you're getting into those numbers, So that's kind of the good thing with developments. It gives you that kind of big buffer, if you like, doesn't it? In the end, it was about 340,000, I think, in the end. So it was more than we thought, yeah.
I love that what you say, even about breaking even, you were still prepared to go for it because, you a lot of people are just holding back. They were, oh no, I won't do that unless I make, like if it's a flip or something like that, even on a flat, I'm not going to do that unless I make at least 20 grand, I mean, I always say, you need that experience, you need to get involved, we always say that, actually learning on the job and getting your hands dirty and doing it is probably the best experience. I know you said that you didn't really get that involved with the build of it, but you must have been on site there probably daily and just seen everything that was going on. So you must have learned a lot from that as well, eh?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think on that, I think that it's easier to talk yourself out. You can talk yourself out of any deal. The deal can be the best deal in the world. If you analyze it and look at it from every single avenue and dot every I, cross every T, get all your ducks in a row, you'll find a reason not to do any deal. So at some point you have to be able to be willing to pull the trigger and sort of deal with what comes up. Once you pull the trigger, it's not about worrying about what can happen. It's about dealing with what comes up each day, isn't it? And that's, I suppose, a big difference between people who just talk about it against people who actually go out and do it, isn't it? So yeah, I think so. And then, by putting yourself in that sort of uncomfortable situation and that out your comfort zone, that's where you grow daily, isn't it? If you, what do they say? If you're ripe, you're right, and if you're green, you grow. So if you try and ever think you're at your peak, and now I'm just going to sort of retire and just see myself out, or whatever, you're just going to decline, because obviously you will. You're not pushing yourself. You're not trying to grow. And I've kind of forgotten the question you asked me, Nick. So
I was just agreeing. I was agreeing with what you said, basically about like even at the break-even point, you were still going to go for it because you would have got people. You see people out there, they invest like tens of thousands of pounds in education and all that, but they never actually get right at doing anything. You think if you'd just done something, like if it was a flip or something, then you would be far ahead of a lot of other people. So
yeah, no, definitely. I think that again, we see people with that a lot, where they worry so much about the first one and the fact that they can't tick all the boxes on the first one. What they're not seeing is that the first one's always going to be your hardest. When you jump on a bike and try and get momentum with it, the first few times you turn the pedal, you've got to get standing start. You've got to get it moving, and when you get it moving, it gets easier, doesn't it? And it's the same with developments. The first money you ever borrow is going to be really difficult, like it was for us. But actually, then, especially in this current climate, does that person want his money back at the end if you've kept him informed and given him his return and whatever? Of course, he's going to want to go into the next deal with you. But not only that, it might be someone else who's been watching you, or a family friend, or there's going to be the next level of people who perhaps they were a bit too risk averse to do the first deal with you because they're a bit too cautious. But once you've done it 2 or 3 times and they can see that the process has worked, it's easier to get the finance. It's easier to get the trades to work for you because they can see they're going to get long-term work. It's easier to get the deals because the agents come to you instead of you going and trying to chase the agent down and feeling like you've never done developments before, so why would they ever believe you anyway? So the whole process, I'm not saying it's never easy. There's always stuff goes wrong, obviously, but it's easier than when you start out, if you like.
No, absolutely, mate. And so that this first deal kind of cemented Whitebox for you guys, and you started preparing on. Take us kind of forward to now. Do you manage do you have your own kind of building company that's contracted to do developments anymore? Do you subcontract all the work out to the other trades?
Sorry, yeah, we still have Redbox. So that was my 2007, me in a van on my own. Obviously grew through the extensions of my house and then doing St James. It's still our main contractor for the sites that we do now. It does the sites up north because we work in Cumbria a lot, just because we did a few sites up there, and all the opportunity comes in, all the people who know us up there. So we still use Redbox as the main contractor, but it's kind of remote, if you like. Yeah. And then locally to here, we are the proper main contractor with all of my actual guys that work on site as well. But that's just
you managed to keep the kind of the build cost down to such a decent level to make these deals stack up, especially now.
Well, not really, because we Redbox has always kind of still been my company, and it's only now actually that we're looking to bring Lloyd into that as well. Just because everything else we do is sort of 50-50, and all the other companies we've got hundreds of boxes. Yeah. So for those who don't know us, we've got Green Box Letting, White Box is our training company. We've got Black Box is an investment company. We've got a yellow box, a blue box, and all sorts of different boxes.
What colour of box will you be going out in? That's what I want to ask you.
Run out of colours.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of jokes around that, but I don't know what target audience you're going for. So
hopefully that'll be a good few years to come. Anyway, you've got plenty of years left with us, Andy. But no, I think we caught a glimpse of Lloyd going past there in the background, actually. So
yeah, he was on a site visit, but he's here now. Look, give him a wave, Lloyd.
There he is. All right, mate. How you doing?
He can't hear you because he's on my headphones. But yeah,
you've been demoted to talking to us two today, so
yeah. No, it's all good. You got the I don't know. Certainly the tallest out of the two of us, but yeah, no, we're quite a sideshow. Yeah, we I think that again we're doing this as a partnership has been really beneficial to us. So yeah, I think that all the challenges that come up. You don't know what they're going to be, and it's good to have someone to sound it off and who's on the same journey. Sometimes we've got the balls in the vice like you have as well. You kind of, if it goes wrong for both of us. It's not just one of us. So sometimes when you've got someone who works for you, if you like, they're not kind of got the skin in the game. So you're making those important decisions together. And that early one where we sat around my table seeing if St James would work, we still do that daily. It's just on different sites, on bigger sites, if you like. There's still decisions like that you make. They're just on bigger stuff now, aren't they?
So I mean, with all these boxes that you've got on, I mean, how do you juggle all that then? If you had to get, I mean, obviously, have you got a team now in place with different, you got staff and that to kind of manage the different aspects of it?
Yeah, and staff are a really important thing of it. Just like we just said about leveraging funds from other people. As one person or two of us, you can only do so much. You've only got so much capability, and all you'll do is stress yourself out, and you'll miss stuff, and things will start going wrong. And the biggest companies in the world they've got the same amount of time in the day. Elon Musk Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. They've all got the same time in the day that we've got. They just choose to use it differently to people who sort of keep themselves contained and stressed out. And the real difference in that is the team around you. So yeah, we're in our offices here, and we're just coming back after COVID now. So we're tentatively sort of starting working back from the offices, and it's great after that year of everyone working remotely to have everyone back here bouncing off of each other and sort of seeing those ideas coming about. But yeah, we've got, as I said, lettings teams. So when we build them, we keep them, we look after them ourselves.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Yeah, I heard you say that. So you do the lettings in-house, the property management, because that in itself can be quite a headache, because I'll do it myself. Obviously, I'm a letting agent. So yeah, that must be quite a big decision to keep that in-house.
Yeah, to be honest, not a headache for me. Someone else does it.
Yeah.
I think that was a decision then, Andy, because as you're building the portfolio and growing the portfolio, rather than outsourcing it to a company that's probably not going to have your best interests at heart, they're just taking a fee, that you would just employ somebody to kind of manage that in-house for you guys.
Yeah, I think that there's a definite level, if you like, where it becomes more efficient to do it yourself. If you've just got one or two houses, then there's no point. Why would you settle that up and try and look after it themselves? You get a letting agent, you find someone who's decent, pay them the percentage that they deserve, and don't get the cheapest one, and get someone who's actually going to try and look after it. But especially when you've got HMOs, if you've got a portfolio of HMOs with 30 rooms or something like that, you've only got to have a few rooms empty a month. And if you've got an agent who's looking for that, they've probably got another 10, 20, 30, 40 other HMO landlords who have got 10, 20, 30, 40 rooms of their own. What's to say they're going to prioritize your room over someone else's when they come up? So we found it was much more efficient to have our own team. They're only looking after our rooms. They're even their bonuses, if you like, are set to make sure those rooms are full. So they're just it was a massive difference to like void periods and collecting rents in and all those kind of things. But like I say, you need to have enough rooms to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's not a service you offer out to the public. That's just for your own managed development.
No, because then I'd be stressed out like Nick, wouldn't I?
Exactly. you look like Nick.
That's it. What would I want that for? No, so we just got we've got one team member who it's there enough work for them, if you like. But if we had 300 rooms we were doing for other people, then we'd be taking on all their small problems, wouldn't we? Which is going to stop us moving forward doing the bigger stuff that we want to do. So it's not something.
You diversified into like HMO then, as well as the single units then. So you've got quite a...
Well, yeah. So that was kind of back in the early days. So we don't necessarily, well, I don't know. It depends which part of the last 7 years you look at, I suppose. But in the early days, we got the site for St. James for the 8 houses, but it took a while to get that, through planning. Once we'd bought it in the February, we actually got on site in September. And then it was July, we finished it the next year in 2015. So developments is a longer process. And, obviously we couldn't, some of that time we're not even working on St. James. It's just going through the process, if you like. So we were concentrating on smaller stuff. We bought what we were learning was about HMOs and things like that at the start of that year. So we thought, even that felt like a big jump. So people are worried about developments. We were worried about HMOs in them days. They felt just as hard to do as something like St. James. We managed to get a 4-bed terrace house, standard 4-bed terrace house. It's kind of what Lloyd did while I was looking at the development side of it. And he spent his time around his full-time job because he was still working a full-time job at that point. And he went there and actually the first one we got online in about September, a little 4-bed. We actually went in and did a lot of the work ourselves. So I put the en-suites in. Lloyd, he's not really practical, so he could only paint, so he decided to try and paint it. Now Lloyd's about 4 foot nothing, so he's great at painting the skirting boards, but he couldn't really paint above that. So we realised that was never going to fly. So we decided we'd get other people to do it after that. But we realised it wasn't really the best use of our time. Is the point, I suppose. That we could have done all the refurbs ourselves forever, but I wouldn't be sitting here talking during 2021 with all the sites that we've got going on. We'd have still been doing HMOs and the stuff that our minds could conceive at that point, I suppose.
One thing at a time, yeah.
Yeah, so it just, like I say, wasn't the best use of our time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually really cautious of time, and we could keep you here for hours, but I think we should do a part 2 with Lloyd. I think that'd be brilliant if we can get him on to give his side of it and what you guys are, how you're growing and where the business is right now, and what your plans are for the future.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Can we touch a little bit on you added the training side into it a couple of years ago, didn't you? What was the
well, no, it's been a while now. It was actually in 2015. So we'd only been going about a year, and why that really came from was because the community we were in, a lot of people, we were doing stuff which was very different to what they were doing. They were doing single buy-to-lets, HMOs, and all that kind of stuff. We jumped into obviously bigger developments. So a lot of people were really interested in that and seeing how that transition was. I specifically spent quite a lot of time, probably 2 or 3 times a week. I'll be showing people around the site, explaining, what the process we'd done was and all that kind of stuff. And it was Lloyd said about, in 2015, said, well, why don't we just, get all those people together and we'll talk about it. We'll have to hire a room, whatever, and we'll just show them all in one hit, because it's taken a lot of your time up and, in individually showing people. So that's kind of how it all started. It wasn't necessarily a course at the time. It was just, to show people more efficiently. And then it grew from there. It was 2 days. And then we've added like all our power team members come and speak. Me and Lloyd still, 6 years later, still run it's a 3-day course now and really packed. It's the whole sort of blueprint of how you do what we do and go from the transitions that we did. And it is a proper all intensive course of developments really. And yeah, that's kind of developed itself over that 6 years and shows people how they can mitigate some of those issues that we came across in the early days and even now really, so they don't have to make the same mistakes, if you like.
No, absolutely. I can appreciate that totally.
So from doing all the stuff that you do, Andy, like where does your true passion still lie? I mean, do you still get a buzz from doing obviously the big developments and stuff like that, or have you kind of gone into more of a kind of training guy, or where are you at now?
I suppose the development side of it is still what I do. So yeah, I like working with the guys and seeing the sites come out and all that kind of stuff. Lloyd looks after the training side of it more. He's not like I say, not that he's not a practical person. He's not the development side of it, if you like. So his job is more to look after the training side of the community. That was something which was really alien to me. That was definitely one of Lloyd's harebrained ideas, to sort of get people together and start talking. When we first started, I was pretty self-conscious, to be honest. I wouldn't have even sat in a room and put my hand up to ask a question, and all that kind of thing.
He was a salesman background, right? So he kind of had that gift of the gab and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's it. So, but actually, that's something that's really surprised me. I really do love that now, and working with all the people in the community and helping them through and mentoring them through it. That's it's really balanced me out, if you like, because it really challenged the bits that didn't come naturally to me. So I think that's something that's probably given me the most growth of our journey. I've grown through the development side of it, but I already knew some of that, and that was the side I could have hidden in anyway, if you like. But the training side of it and the mindset side of it, something which I've been on a big journey myself with fitness over that time and all sorts of things, so I probably wouldn't have been pushed down those routes without that. So I think something I really appreciate.
Yeah, man, you're looking good. Like I look back in some old photos of you from back 2015, 16, and what a change.
Yeah, I was definitely chunky then. I'm not so much now. I love CrossFit and all that kind of fitness side of it. Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah.
It's good. Do you find that helps your business performance, being more healthier and physically active as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've got again through going through that personal development mindset side of it. I've got very sort of solid morning routines, and get up really early and do a lot of stuff early. And just that whole. I would have never known any of that sort of stuff. You just you do what you know, don't you? And you get up early. I've always worked hard. In fact, for me, I probably have to try and tame that side of it down a little bit, because I'm a bit of a workaholic. I could work too much, and I've learned that just stresses my family out, the people out around me, and all that kind of stuff. So we all have to fight one way or the other, and I have to sort of try and tame that down a little bit and not expect of others that I've in the past done myself. And like I say, it stresses people out. So yeah, that self-development side has really helped me. Yeah.
It's good, mate. It's good. And what's the future hold for you guys? Where do you see the business going in the next 5 years?
This is just the beginning for us. Yeah, and I think we've had an amount of success over the last 7 years or so, but we just feel like we're on the first couple of rungs of the ladder, really, and that we want to do more of what we enjoy, which will be still in the training space. We enjoy mentoring people. We enjoy the contact with people and all of that. Obviously, the sites are growing, and the amount of sites we can do consecutively and at the same time are growing as well. I don't think we're too greedy with that. Like in the past we've thought we want to get onto these really big monster sites and all that, but I think that we've realized that we don't need to do that. Our model works quite well. We're getting some good traction. You know, we can mitigate risk by keeping the sort of size sites that we've got and all that kind of thing. So I think over the next 5 years, yeah, we'll and I think the last year has been a bit of a leveler for all of that, isn't it? You know, we've enjoyed sort of, I suppose, connecting with the family well and all that kind of thing. So it's definitely a focus on work-life balance, but we still want to keep the traction and progress that we've got and building the team around us, really.
Right, mate. Love it.
Yeah,
Could you? Sorry, Nick.
Sorry. No, I was going to ask you with the training thing, because I've always like wondered, you know, like about getting into that sort of space and that how it can benefit you. Obviously, Stephen does a bit of training. Does it bring you opportunities to work with, like, you know, other people who have got money and joint ventures and funders and stuff like that? Is that not really a thing that kind of that drives you in that space?
No, it definitely is. I mean, at the end of the day, that people invest and work with people, don't they? So, you know, whether that be going out on a golf course and you know, spending time with people that way, or whether it's building friends and relationships, going to the local gym or whatever it is, doesn't really matter. It's where you spend time with people and get to know them outside of what you do as well as inside what you do. And, you know, an example of that, I was at they call it a team WOD, a workout of the day, and I was at one on Saturday, and I was just talking to a guy afterwards. In fact, they'd set up a bit of a Saturday morning sort of breakfast barbecue off, because, you know, to thank people for sticking to them with through COVID and things like that. And so they'd set that up, and I was just talking to him, have a cup of coffee and whatever. He turned out he worked at a US naval base quite close to us, quite interested in a second income in property and all that kind of stuff. I had a copy of Lloyd's book in the boot of the car, sent him some follow-up information. You know, it's just that's the spark of, but you have those conversations because you're in a comfortable place in an environment you both know. And, you know, like if you just bumped into that guy at the supermarket, you probably wouldn't have gone that far, would you? Whereas, you know,
weirdo.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Right.
So, but it's all, yeah, it's all based around sort of that sort of comfortable environment, I suppose, isn't it? And like I say, it doesn't matter whether that's a gym or whatever. It's you know, they say that business is done on a golf course. It's not because you spend time with those people talking about getting to know them, isn't it? You know, and you know that's the reality of it. It doesn't mean that you go and do a deal on the golf course that afternoon. You get to know that person, and then 6 months or 2 months later, when something comes up, you think, oh, they were talking about that, you know, the other month or whatever. So you build those relationships, don't you?
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%.
So important in business. I'd like to thank you very much, Andy, for joining us. We appreciate it. Could you let the listeners know where they can reach out to you on your social media channels or your website?
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, the website is whiteboxps.com. You can go on there and see what sort of trainings we've got. So we've got the 3-day property developers secrets. It's a physical course. They come and spend 3 days with me and Lloyd, and they're long days as well because there's a lot of content for us to get through. But you go away from that with the whole mindset of being a developer, as well as all the blueprint of all the steps. We've also got some online offerings that they can access through there. So we've got a land sourcing academy, we've got a project management masterclass, and a commercial conversion accelerator. So all are based around developments. We've got a discovery day as well that they can go on there. So if people just want to see what the developments is for them, they can spend a few hours with me and Lloyd to sort of dig a bit deeper than we've talked about here. YouTube's a brilliant resource though. So Whitebox Property Solutions, go and find the channel, and you know, we put quite a lot of free content on there just to again show people who we are, the Whitebox way we call it. So hashtag Whitebox way. You know, just we feel we're a bit different, a bit more approachable, and yeah, they can go and see. We've even done videos around that site we've been talking about there, St James, sort of looking back at, you know, how we were feeling at the time and what's happened since and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, spend time in YouTube. I mentioned Lloyd's book earlier, so Property Development by Lloyd Girardi. And yeah, if anyone's interested in developments, I'd really recommend going to get that. You know, he spent a lot of time documenting the sort of start of our journey up to 3 years ago and how that sort of transpired. And yeah, it's just a good starting point if people are interested in it, to see if it's right for them, I suppose.
Cool. You'll be coming out with a fitness book soon, Andy.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
You're looking
at a DVD set.
Right, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us. It was absolutely brilliant. I can't believe how quickly the hour's gone just like that. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Quickly, Andy. Thanks very much for that. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Andi Cooke. I know myself and Nick certainly did. It's so easy just to chat to him, and he's so free-flowing and such a down-to-earth guy with sharing the information that, you know, how they've started up and how they've built up their business.
Yeah, we're going to try and get his business partner on the podcast as well, Lloyd. So he's quite a good talker as well. So we'll see if we can line him up for a future episode. Guys, as always, we really appreciate your support on the podcast. If you find a couple of minutes to leave a review, that'd be hugely appreciated. If you could share the podcast in a screenshot on your Instagram stories and tag myself and Stephen, we'll share you out to our followers as well. And if you've got any ideas, suggestions for the podcast, then please just send us a message or get us on the Facebook group. And yeah, as always, thanks again.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you.